Hello and welcome to Sip Sip Hooray, the podcast about wine, the interesting people who make it, and the never-ending appeal of wine country living. For many wine lovers, the dream of owning a vineyard, perhaps raising your family among the vines, and creating your own winery is a favorite daydream, or perhaps the answer to what would you do if you won the lottery. But our guest today is living that dream. Denis Hoey didn't get there by winning the lottery. The realization of his dream came with a lot of hard work and perhaps some blood, sweat, and hopefully not too many tears. But he is living the dream exactly what he hoped to do as owner and winemaker of Odonata Winery in the Monterey AVA. And we are delighted that Denis is our guest today. We are, of course, the two Marys who like to eat, drink, and be merry. I'm Mary Babbitt.
And I'm Mary Orland, and today we are sitting with Denis in between the tanks and barrels in his winery on River Road in the Salinas Valley. And his winery is one of 7 that's on the River Road Wine Trail. So it's a great place to come, sip a few glasses of wine, including some bubbly, and just enjoying the atmosphere, soaking up being among the Viognier vines here. So Denis is a little bit crazy. He makes about 32 different wines. So there's something for every taste out there. And if you love sparkling wine, this is a destination for you. So we'll get to know Denis, talk about his wines, taste a little. Denis, welcome to Sip Sip Hooray.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's exciting to be here and to get to know you today. Can you tell us how you went from thinking this is what having this dream and then actually making it happen? You worked for other wineries first and then created your own label and your own deal. Can you kind of walk us through some of that?
Yeah. So I got my start in 2004 when I met my mentor, Jeff Emery, at Santa Cruz Mountain Vineyard. He was moving his winery and just needed help moving. So I started helping him move and bottling. And I had the epiphany moment when we were bottling the 2003 Rosé of Grenache. We just finished bottling, and I just said, I love this, and I'm done. This is what I want to do. And I was graduating college. I was trying to be a firefighter.
Were you really?
Yeah. I'd done my EMT. I was just graduating college with a business degree and was heading home to Sacramento to go pursue that.
And you were at UC Santa Cruz? Where were you?
I was at UC Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
And so one of my teachers introduced me to Jeff, and we just hit it off. And I just fell in love with wine. I fell in love with him. I've had just met a girl who's now my wife that I needed to, stick around Santa Cruz to see about. So I just got bit really hard by the wine bug, and I remember bringing that bottle of Grenache Rosé home to my girlfriend, who again is my wife now, and plunking that bottle on the table and just being like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Wow. Really? And was she on board, or was she like, yeah?
She looked at me like I was crazy. Because I had been doing my business degree. I was graduating in 3 years. I did my EMT and my massage practitioner's license all in those 3 years.
Come on.
So I like to pile a lot on myself. And so this girl that I just started dating is looking at me like, okay, so you've had this line going towards being a firefighter, and now you're going to be a winemaker. Okay. You're nuts.
Exactly. But what a great mentor to have in Jeff Emery. He's a well-respected winemaker in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and makes just amazing wines. How did you come to work with him?
So one of my teachers, she was my herbology teacher and my massage practitioner's license deal. She was one of Jeff's good friends, and Jeff needed help moving stuff. And at that time I was training really hard and I was pretty fit. And she was just like, well, we need somebody to go move 6,000 cases by hand onto pallets and get it out of the winery that he was moving out of. She was like, you want to come do that? I was like, yeah, that sounds good. And so she did the introduction for us, and then Jeff and I were just inseparable after that. He just kept asking me to come, and I kept not leaving him alone. And so 2004, we moved up to Big Basin, made wine up there. Jeff rented space there. 2005, I asked Jeff if I could start my own little thing where I was only going to make like 65 cases to 100 cases, but my focus was still Santa Cruz Mountain Vineyard. And then as those things go, the bug just kept going. I was working 3 jobs at the time. So I was working for Jeff, I was bartending weddings, and I was a trainer at a gym.
No way, really?
Just to be able to live in Santa Cruz. It's expensive.
You probably were not sleeping.
No, I would go from one job to the next to the next. But then things kept coming in line where we were working at Big Basin, and then Big Basin needed help in the vineyards, so I got to work in the vineyards there for a year or two. My wife needed to move up to San Rafael at the time. Probably that was 2005 for grad school. She did her occupational therapy master's, and so we moved all my stuff up there. But I was still working those 3 jobs and commuting.
You were commuting to Big Basin?
Uh-huh.
That's such. I mean, I live in Los Gatos, which isn't that far from Big Basin, and that's still a heck of a drive from Los Gatos.
Yeah, it was a lot of driving. But luckily, so the first year, Jeff and I were still getting to know each other, and I still had a lot of friends in college, so I just couch surfed. So I would go for the week, and I would just couch surf and be a couch bum for a week, and then I'd get back to Claire around Saturday, Sunday range, and so that got a little trying. So my brother actually is a brewer, and so he was working for
like in Berkeley or something.
yeah, it was.
I read this. I read up.
Bison Brewing. Sorry, brain fart. Bison Brewing. So
Sorry, brother.
So so they needed a bottling line tech, and so San Rafael and Berkeley are pretty close. So I took that job on and dropped the gym job, and then eventually dropped the bartending job, and was just doing vineyard work, winery work, and a bottling line tech for Bison Brewing. And I learned a lot about myself, and because it was just me at Bison Brewing, they were like, all right, put it in the bottle. And so I had to like fix machines. I had to fix things when they were broken. I had to rebuild things that had been undone. So that was like a real formative time for me to really grow as where there's no option, you just do it. So that really served me very, very well into the future. So that kept doing that until we moved back to Santa Cruz when Claire's 2-year program was up. In the interim, for harvest and everything, so we did 2 years that way. So first year I was a couch bum, and then the second year Jeff was nice enough to let me sleep in a bedroom in his house. He was like, all right, I gotta like, this guy's not leaving. So I just kind of went to him and I was like, I can't like couch surf anymore in college crash pads. Cause I mean, they're all partying in college and not going to bed till 2 or 3 in the morning. Oh, yeah, and I'm sleeping on your couch, brutal. But I got work at 6 a.m.
Right. So you're in the party, but you're trying to sleep.
I was just getting wrecked.
Yeah.
Just from a sleep deprivation thing. But so then 2004, 5, and 6 were at Big Basin. 7 was we had to move to Byington for an interim while we waited for in 2008 to move to the Swift Street Courtyard area where Jeff and I built a winery together in 2008. And that's when I got so I had been in 2005 and 6, I had made 65 cases. In 6, I made 100 cases. And I was still a 1720, which is basically, it's a way, you don't have your own winery, but it's a way to be legal and have your label. Mm-hmm. So I was still making it under Jeff's bond. But then when we moved in 2008 to Santa Cruz, we did what's called an alternating proprietorship, where I actually got my own bonded winery there with Jeff.
Okay, so that's how that works. Okay,
so that's when
a big step.
That's when I got really legitimate about it. And then in 2008, I made 350 cases, taking over the world. And Jeff was nice enough to let me be open 1 day a month was our agreement. So I was open the first Saturday of every month. And from there, I was like generating wine club members and just people starting to get to know my brand and just slowly, organically growing this little tiny brand. Then flash forward to 2011, my wife and I jumped off a little cliff, which was taking on a pretty substantial leasehold on Mission Street. A place came available. I was friends with the Au family, who are real prominent leasers in Santa Cruz, and this place came up. We built out a beautiful little tasting room on the west side next to a Companion Bake Shop, and I remember vividly Gavin being just born in a bassinet when I was signing the lease papers at Companion Bake Shop. And
that's the gulp moment. Like, here goes nothing, right?
It was frightening because like we'd never had. I mean, we'd bought a house, so we had the function of like, okay, a mortgage is,
we're grown-ups
that you gotta like, yeah, we're grown-ups. That's a great way to say it. And then signing that lease, we were like, okay, well, here we go.
You're all in at that point. For
sure. So one of my other mentors, Doug Feinsod, he's taught me how to sweat copper, do drywall, do all that stuff. So he and I basically did the majority of the transformation of that space. Claire and I worked together decorating it and buying the furniture and everything for it. And when we opened, our wine club was strong enough to sustain a tasting room, and then we could build from there.
That's fantastic. I remember the tasting room. I visited it, and it was really beautiful.
Cool.
She has a touch for design.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk to you about the label because it is also a beautiful design. How did the name come about?
So I've been really fortunate with graphic artists in my time. Gilly Wolf is the gal that I met at a tasting when I was pouring for Jeff. And she just leaned over the counter and was like, I'm a graphic artist and I'd like to design a wine label. And I was like, well, you're in luck because I need one designed. So just, and this has been a recurrent theme in my entire career. Just the right people and beautiful people come into my life at the right time. And just so fortunate for that.
It's lovely. And the name Odonata, what inspired that and what's behind it?
So my wife and I were sitting in a field up in the Sierra foothills at a beer festival, just hanging out with my brother, and a bunch of dragonflies flying around. We were like, okay, that's cool. Because my last name's Hoey and her last name is Blackman. Both are not so sexy. So we decided to pursue the dragonfly thing. I'd just gotten out of, a marketing course like a year or two before, and I was like, we can make a strong brand image. We put the Celtic knots in the wings of the dragonfly, and so we went online and kind of Google searched, and Google told us that Odonata is the order of dragonflies and damselflies, and we're like, okay, well that's esoteric enough to work.
Yes.
So
there's a nice ring to it too.
Yeah.
It flows. It's pretty.
Most people think we're a sake Japanese joint, but
really?
it's Latin, because it's like Odonata, But yeah, so it's esoteric enough to work, and the dragonfly is kind of now our power bug.
Oh, I love it.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, in hearing your story, I think a recurrent theme is definitely the willingness to work hard for what you want. And you didn't shy away from taking on 3 jobs at a time, sacrificing sleep and sacrificing creature comforts to make it happen. And then also being open to opportunities as they come along.
Yeah.
And I think that so often in life, we think we want to do something, but we don't actually take the steps to make something happen, right? And so it's that combo that you seemed really, I don't know if it was a space in your life or just who you are, you seemed willing to put those things together.
And what kept you going? Because I'm sure there were times you probably thought, this is way too much. Am I going to get to what I want to be doing ultimately?
I've always had drive. I think my mom and dad really instilled that in me, that it's like if you want something, you can do it and you go do it. And so I've always considered myself a doer. And even when I'm working with people and they're saying, oh, someday I want to do that, I just look at them like, you either do or you don't. Like, there's no someday, there's no maybe. If there's maybe in your heart, you're never going to do it. You gotta, especially for wine, it is not an easy industry to get into. It's very expensive. Like I said, I've met some beautiful people that have helped me along the way at the times where I needed them. But it really boils down to grit, and you have to want to work hard. If you don't want to work hard and you think it's just going to come easy, just don't. You need not apply.
Yeah.
Well, and
go ahead, Mary.
And so many people do think that they don't realize all the hard work that goes into creating a label. And you may seem like, an overnight sensation or success, and they don't know about all the toil behind it.
Well, we romanticize wine so much. It's a lovely beverage, and the wineries we visit and stuff, we're on vacation, so it all just seems really lovely and easy, and a bunch of R&R.
My favorite thing is people are like, well, harvest is over, so what do? You go on vacation for the rest of the year? And I'm like, no.
Yeah, you're downtime.
I keep working. This is my job.
The wine doesn't make itself.
So tell us about the move from the Santa Cruz area down here to Monterey, AVA, and you guys are in the Salinas Valley here?
We are in the Salinas Valley. I had very little experience down here. I grew up going to Pacific Grove with my parents, and so that was Monterey to me. But I didn't really know much about the whole of Monterey, and I knew that the Santa Lucia Highlands was producing some amazing grapes, and so I was like, okay, I can move into an area like that, coming from the Santa Cruz Mountains, and so let me back up. My wife and I had been looking for a new space. We looked all over the Santa Cruz Mountains. Everything was either way too expensive or way too messed up that we would never be able to get on the step to even be able to continue the winery. I found a warehouse that we were about to sign the lease for. I drug my family up and down the mountains everywhere looking for where our next move was. And then I found this place when I was looking for equipment for that warehouse for sale. And my parents were coming down that night that I found it. I talked to Joel, the owner of this property, before they got there, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to see if my family wants to come down and check it out tomorrow. And so we made an appointment. So we're sitting at dinner, and I'm like, hey, there's this place that I want to go check out. And my family's like, oh God, not another place to go check out. But they willingly went with me. Mm-hmm. So we come down, we check it out, and I'm already on the warehouse. That's my direction. That's where I'm going. And I'm being like this negative person. And we sit down at lunch, and my whole family looks at me, and they're like, you idiot, you found it. Go get it.
Really? Oh.
They knew.
Yeah. They were like, that place is awesome. Because I was finding all the reasons why it didn't work and all this stuff. And my wife, my parents, everybody was just like, dude, you've been trying to make everything else work. What's wrong with you? Go get this place. So
that was almost 10 years ago?
That was 8 years ago.
8 years ago.
It's great to have that support behind you.
And did it work? And you're glad you made the move?
100%. So we leveraged everything we had. We had to sell our house. It had to concurrently close with the sale of this place. I raised all the funds privately because the banks basically thought I was unemployed. So all private money raised in 1 week to make the offer. We basically threw every single thing we had into it to get to this property. We had, like we were discussing, I had to be working on all my licensing while we were in escrow so that when we actually occupied the space, we were able to open and be selling wine.
Because you had a 30-day deadline to get it open, right?
Yes.
That's hustle.
Yeah, that's hustle and bustle. So we redid the whole tasting room. My mentor, Doug, his adage for this property was it was the right amount of messed up for me to be able to afford it. And since then, I love this property. I was just having this discussion with somebody yesterday where it's like they're gonna have to take me off this property kicking and screaming.
Aww.
I will be buried here. That's what's going on.
This is your forever winery.
This is my love. I pour it in every day. Like this morning, I was up at 6 o'clock weeding. You know, I love this property. I love what we do here. And yeah, so over the 8 years, we've done tons of landscaping. We've planted our vineyard out front. We've built another building in the back. This whole place was just flat and nothing here. And just these 4 walls that we're sitting in right now. And it was already a winery, so a lot of work had been done to just, and I was somebody that knew how to use it, right? Because not everybody can just walk in and swing. Like you need to know how to make wine, you need to know how to run a business, you need to know all these things like we were talking about. It's hard.
All that experience.
This had to be where a lot of your experience, especially working at your brother's brewery and all the mechanical aspects and everything, operations probably came in really handy.
Yeah. Just being able to you put your hands on it and you just do it because there is no other option.
So we have a few wines on the table, and why don't we get started with one?
Yeah, tell us about the kind of wine that you would like to make.
So I'm a pretty delicate winemaker. I try to make wines that are tasty, flavorful, but they're not crazy big dominant, and they're not so delicate that there's no flavor there. I'm playing around with some very silly things, and then I also am playing around with some very serious things. What I'm pouring for you right now is Grenache Rouge. So this has been a project that I've been working on for a few years. It is Grenache that I let sit on the skins for its entire primary fermentation. So it's made almost like a Lambrusco.
Okay.
Where it's a red sparkling wine.
It's really pretty to look at. It's gorgeous.
And this comes from the Santa Lucia Highlands. This comes from Hook Vineyard. It's farmed by Hahn Winery. And this vineyard just has all this guava and like orange marmalade.
That's delicious.
And it's just a really fun deal.
It is fun.
That is really great.
And you don't expect to see a red sparkling wine.
I like to be a little different. So, like I said, we do the traditionals. We do Cab, Pinot, Chard, and then we like to just kind of play around and do some off beaten path things. I used to make a sparkling rosé Sangiovese. You know, I'm now making a more traditional like sparkling rosé Pinot. It'd be a little. I'm growing up. I'm getting a little older. I made my first commercial wine when I was 21. So you know. We've evolved over the past 18 years. So some wines are meant to be really serious, and then other wines are meant to just be fun and playful. This wine's meant to just be enjoyed and not, just drink it.
Don't overthink it.
Don't overthink it.
It is really what I like about it. So it's not it's dry and crisp and fresh and lovely. It's not super sweet.
And I think you have you make several sparklings, and so I think there must be some attraction between bubbly for you. I saw on your Instagram, your most recent post, you were savoring a bottle.
We savor
you
a lot.
Wild man.
we savor a lot around here. It's celebratory and fun. And,
yeah, sure.
And my wife and I love bubbles, and we've been to Champagne, and bubbles are on our table quite a bit. So I was like, all right, well, I'll start. So I started making bubbles in 2010. So we've been at it almost 12 years now. This will be our 12th shot at making bubbles. That's the one thing also, like, just to get back to like why winemaking is what it is. You got to like the pressure, and you got to like that you have one shot. So I've had 12 shots to make bubbles, right? And maybe I have 4 shots a year because I'm making 4 different bubbles. But you only have that one shot. I don't get to just be like, oh, that didn't work. Well, next month I'll tweak it this way.
Right. It's not like whipping up a batch of cookies that didn't turn out. You're like, just start over. You don't have the product.
Right. And even not to knock brewers, but I mean, my brother's a brewer. But that batch doesn't show up. That's 12, that's maybe 2 weeks of your life, and you're like, I'll just make another one.
Yeah.
And I mean, brewing is super scientific and very specific and very hard. But their time frame is 2 weeks for a lot of their products. Ours is 2 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
To have a product out there where we're like, oh, maybe that's not what we want to be doing. So it's a high stakes poker.
It is.
But
I love it. I love the pressure. My nephew is shadowing me this week for bottling, and what I told him was, it was like, bottling is super stressful. You need to have everything in line. You have to have everyone showing up when they're supposed to be showing up. It takes all this pressure to like get it all put together, but I love it.
Sure.
Because I like that pressure. I like to be busy, and I like, when everything goes well and it gets put into bottle, it's beautiful. Even yesterday, we were racking wines into tanks, and there was this calm and this quiet that came over the crush pad because everybody knew where they needed to be. Nobody was like, hey, can you get this for me? Can you do that? Everything was just flowing and felt beautiful. And that's like a beautiful symphony to me, where everything's just working.
Everyone's doing their thing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's magic, right?
Yeah.
So you mentioned your nephew's shadowing you. I know that you've helped many people kind of get their start, or at least give them an opportunity to work with you and bring them along. Can you talk about how you've been mentoring some aspiring winemakers?
Yeah.
Well, and you're paying it back and paying it forward, right? Because you really got helped out, as you mentioned.
Yeah, with and I'm sorry, we're gonna have a little bit of noise because we are a working winery.
That's okay.
But so with Jeff and Doug, they taught me the value of, this is a trade, and this is something that you can teach, and this is something you can pass on. And Jeff actually learned the same exact way from Ken Burnap in Santa Cruz Mountain Vineyard. So Ken taught to Jeff, Jeff taught to me, and now I'm paying that forward as well. So I've got Chad from Rustique Winery. He came to me when he was 19. And it's been really a pleasure to watch him grow up and grow into the man that he is. We still work together. Rustique wines are still made here at Odonata. But Chad is, as of 2021, Chad is the winemaker for Rustique Wines. But he started with me, not even thinking he wanted to be in wine, but he got bit like I did.
There you go.
And he went off to college. He worked for me for 2 years, then went off to college, worked at a bunch of other wineries, and now he's back home. And it's such a pleasure to just see him blossom and grow.
Nice. It's fantastic.
And
again, we are at a working winery, and we're having deliveries or trucks pulling up. It's it's typical.
we're doing our best, but yeah, wineries are loud.
And that's what I think a lot of people don't realize. That they think, oh, we're going to visit a winery and it's beautiful, and we're a bucolic setting. But there's a lot of moving parts that need to happen.
There's a lot of machinery, a lot of loud machinery. Like during harvest, when the press is going and the chiller's going and the pumps and everything are just humming, it's loud.
Is that a rooster too out here?
Oh yeah, that's Big Red. We have 11 chickens, 1 rooster, and a duck.
Oh my goodness!
Wow.
Quite a menagerie.
Yeah.
And you also have a couple dogs.
A couple dogs, couple goldfish. Yeah, it's it's a fun. So we bought this little 5-acre ranch, and it's just kind of keeps evolving and keeps blossoming, and I love being here. But back to the mentorship thing. So Chad started with me, and then while Chad was with me, I met Junior Benuelos, and he came to me just open and willing to learn, and he's been my right-hand man for 7 years now.
That's fantastic.
And so he's started his own brand, Sling and Stone Wines. Both of them are just, like I said, that symphony that was happening. It's because Chad Jr. and I have worked together so long that just on the crush pad. And I had the same thing with Jeff, where we didn't need to talk to each other. We knew exactly where we needed to be, and we could support each other without even needing to utter a word. Mm-hmm. And that's cool.
And that's so great that you could recreate that type of relationship and atmosphere here.
Well, and valuing that it's your turn to help someone else. It wasn't that long ago when you were the guy trying to figure it all out and learn the process and learn the craft. And now to be able to teach others is a really cool thing.
It's a lot of moving parts, and it's a lot of things. And I mean, we're still working on things where it's a lot of information that you have to be able to process and put into action the way that you want it to be put into. And it takes a lot of time and intention and thought and energy outside of just the sheer mechanics of the work.
Sure. So that's commendable that you do that. And let's drink to that. Let's try something else.
Yeah, let's do it. So let's do a little bit of Pinot since, we're talking about traditionals. So this is the Santa Lucia Highlands Pinot from Escol Vineyard. The Caraccioli family farms this. And in 2014, when I moved here, I was lucky enough to get hooked up with Scott Caraccioli. And I've been making the wine consistently since 2014. We changed blocks, we changed clones. Thankfully,
I know you're pausing because you're hearing noise. It's okay.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, we can't control the background noise, but
We're
it
cool
just
with
proves that we are actually here on site.
Yeah. But so the Caraccioli's and Scott is really, really nice, where he knows his vineyard so well, and we talk and we're like, well, this is where I kind of want to drive to. This is what I'm thinking. This is the clone that I'm really interested in. And he'll shift things around and get me a couple of tons of this and that and be like, hey, you really need to check this out. And so it's a really cool collaboration in the vineyard with Scott, and I really appreciate him tremendously for that. So this is mostly clone 943 with a little bit of Swan clone in it.
It is absolutely beautiful. It has that bright cherry fruit. It's floral. It's just silky smooth. Wow.
Thanks.
That's really, really great.
It is.
Boy, thanks to that clone and for your talent in making it and turning it from a grape into a beautiful wine. That's really lovely.
Thank you. I learned Pinot from Jeff. He, that's been their backbone since '75, and it's fun to be working in multiple regions. So we still make a Santa Cruz Mountain Pinot that I farm in Happy Valley in Santa Cruz, and then also to be working in the Highlands, and I get to play in these two very radically different regions, but it's still just very, very focused. I only make the two Pinots because I have to play with a bunch of other stuff. And when you're making 32 wines, you need to have some sort of guideline or focus, which I haven't found yet.
Still searching.
Still searching.
I think one of the things that seems to be key to this area is it seems to be a lot of camaraderie and collaboration with the different winemakers, and y'all seem to know each other in the Monterey County general area, and it's great because it's like a rising tide lifts all boats. You guys, there doesn't appear to be a animosity that I've noticed, and I love that.
I've been blown away time and time again by this community, and it's not even just the wine community; it's the community at large. Like I said, meeting the right people, and there's neighbors. The whole mulch on the front portion of the property, a guy just rolled in and was like, "Hey, I do mulch. I'm just going to drop mulch there till you say stop, because I see what you're doing here and I like it, and I just want to give it to you.
Are you kidding?
Because I want to make it look nice on the road."
That is so nice.
Like, that's the kind of stuff that this county does.
Man.
Neighbors being like, "Hey, you need a backhoe? Great, here, have this backhoe," or, "Hey, I'll come drive it for you. You need a grader," So Chad's dad, very early on, just had a friend that they were going to be dumping this Carmel stone, this ground up Carmel stone, and he was just like, "Oh, it would make a really good road for you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, sure." And by just saying yes and allowing somebody to do a good thing, Chad's dad had all this stuff dumped, brought over his scraper, and made this trucking road on our property that would have cost me, God, don't even know how much, but like those are the types of things that this community's done for me. And it's all based upon, they see you working hard, so they want to support that.
Yeah.
And that's what this community is about, is you work hard and we all will lift each other up.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just flittering about and like, gimme, like nobody's going to give you anything.
Yeah, you're invested here in this community. You
Yeah.
care about your neighbors, and
Yeah.
they care about you.
And you're supporting the community too by what you're doing and how you are mentoring people in the industry. So it's a nice continuum to see.
It's super important. And it's the most important thing of that whole ethos of like community is just lift each other up, don't shut each other apart.
Mm-hmm.
And in some communities that's tough to attain. And in wine, sometimes it can be that way. But in this community, I feel like everyone genuinely wants everyone to do well. And that's special.
Great. Well, let's talk, since you mentioned the patio out front, let's talk about the experience people have when they come to visit you.
We are open every day because we figure we have tons of work to do anyway. So, if nobody's here, the staff can do other things, right? And they can label bottles, or they can do this, that, or the other. So Claire and I decided, let's just be open 7 days a week just so that we're available, right? We started off just Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I had no employees, and I just worked it.
Wow. So you didn't get a break.
No. And so in 2014, when we moved here, I crushed 80 tons by myself and worked the tasting room.
Wow.
So that was silly.
Oh my gosh.
That was silly looking back at it. Now we have full-time staff for the tasting room and have a lot more traffic than we had then.
Mm-hmm.
So we've built a really great tasting experience. It's all outside. The climate here is beautiful. We've built rock walls and things to keep the wind away because the wind is very important to this valley. But, when you're tasting wine, you don't want to be blasted by the wind. So we're constantly trying to up our tasting room experience. And that drive is all driven by the people that come and are excited to be here. And I think everyone that works at Odonata loves wine, is into wine, and is just a fun, good person. So, what we say is go out there, go tell a story. If it's not about wine, it's about relationship building, right? It's about just having a good, comfortable, fun time.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to cultivate just a really warm, beautiful experience for people to just come, and we try to disarm people where, wine doesn't have to be this mysterious thing. If you don't like a particular wine, let's get you a different one.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay, because wine's about you. It's not about, like, I'm making wines because I'm on a journey of like what I'm trying to do, but it's not going to resonate with everyone, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And being okay with that is important.
Absolutely. It's just your personal taste and what you like, right?
Right.
But I think another nice thing about this area and Odonata is that unlike some wine country destinations where you're going to visit the winery, but you're never going to have any glimpse of anybody who's doing any of the work to make the wine, there's a good chance people might bump into you while they're here because you're actually working right here, right next to the production facility and the in your tasting zone. It's cool.
I think that makes River Road pretty special because most of the production facilities are tied to the tasting rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And so you are going to see the owners and the winemakers and that sort of thing happening. It's not just a tasting room floating somewhere in space, like my first tasting room. It's you're there.
Yeah.
And you're in the vineyards, and it's a very cool experience on River Road here. I think it's very special.
So we have another wine to taste, and so if people are here and they get a little sip of Côte de Denis, they might get to meet the namesake on the label. So tell us about this wine.
So Junior and I developed this brand together because we were starting to play with some stuff that's a little off the beaten path. So we were, sorry, I'm pouring wine and talking. Can't walk and chew gum at the same time. So the Côte de Denis label was born because we started making these wines that are just a little twisted or just very twisted, off the beaten path, right?
Okay.
So this one that we just poured is called our Malbec Et. It just means Malbec and.
Okay.
And so it's 4% Viognier. And so I planted the Viognier out in the front to co-ferment with my Syrah. And that's the whole point of that 1.5 acres is for co-fermentation, to put the white with the red.
And is that commonly done, or is that kind of unusual?
In the Rhone region of France, yes. They will put a little bit of Viognier in with their Syrah.
Okay.
So that's like a very, it sets better color. It pushes floral aromatics. It's a really cool way in which to make wine.
Okay.
And I've always wanted to do it, but it's really hard to go to a grower and say, hey, can I get 100 pounds of Viognier on some unknown date? They're like...
Because you need to have it be ripened, basically come in at the same time, be ripe enough to co-ferment with whether it's Syrah or Malbec.
Right.
And that's tricky getting that timing because you don't control it.
Right. So I got really lucky because I planted the vineyard because that's what I wanted to do and have the idea to do that. And we're in a colder area of Monterey, so the Viognier doesn't get as ripe as quickly. Whereas Viognier in San Antonio Valley is one of the first things I pick in the season. So having the Viognier in a colder area, Syrah is one of the last things to come in. So we kind of, like you were saying, Mary, that we kind of brought that timing together.
Yeah.
So even if the Viognier, it doesn't have to be perfectly ripe, right? It just needs to be in the zone for co-fermentation purposes. And so I can just over the period of time, because we make 5 different vineyard designate Santa Lucia Highland Syrahs. Like that's a focus of mine. And so they don't all come in at the same time also. So when we bring in Syrah, we say, okay, well, we need 10 buckets of this. And so we go out and we pick 10 buckets, put it on the scale, and we make sure our percentages are correct. Into the December it goes.
Wow. That's funny.
But there's no way I can do that any other way.
So you're growing it. That makes good sense.
Yeah.
And this is a really yummy wine.
So this one was really silly. So we brought in 10 tons of Malbec, put it into 2 tanks, and I had already picked all of my Syrah, and we still had like 200 pounds of Viognier out there. And so Junior and I just looked at each other, we're like, well, just throw it in there.
Let's go get some buckets.
Yeah. So we picked it. We
Yeah.
threw it in. We threw it into the fermenter, into one of the fermenters, and so we had one fermenter with it and one fermenter without it. And my intention was to just put it all together anyway and whatever. But we pressed them separate because it's 2 different press loads, so it was separate by definition. It got about the same wood program, and as we're tasting it in the cellar, we're just like, oh, this is really open and fun and playful, and the regular Malbec is more dense and chewy and more violets, and it's more restrained and more serious. And so we had already designed the Côte de Denis label for a carbonic Carignan, which is just a wackadoodle fermentation kind of thing where you just starve it of oxygen. It's got all these different esters and things going on that, putting it under Odonata isn't. So the Côte de Denis label was designed for the carbonic Carignan, but we already had the label, and we were like, well, let's just do a little something different. And so the Malbec Et was the second wine under the Côte de Denis label. So we have a Malbec that is more serious under the Odonata label, and then the Malbec Et that has the Viognier as the fun, playful kid. And the story behind the Côte de Denis label is it's my Irish coat of arms. So it's my family crest. And then my dad was a mathematician, and all my family's names were 5 characters. And I was the last born, and they wanted to name me Denis, but it had 6 characters. And then they found out that the French spell it with 1 N.
Okay.
And so my dad was like, yes, that is it.
That's Denis.
Yeah. And so my name was already spelled French. And so Junior and I were like, well, let's just make this really stuffy French label, just really stuffy, make it look just very serious. Like this is going to be a really serious wine. And then just put a bunch of goofy stuff inside.
Playful with
Love
it.
that.
Oh,
That's so great.
So we now have in the tasting room, we have enough Côte de Denis wines that we have 2 different flights you can do. You can do the Odonata flight when you want to just see like San Lucia Highlands, you want to see really serious wines. That's the Odonata flight. And then with Côte de Denis, we've got like all the silliness.
Oh, you get to play around.
And you can check it all out. We've got like Super Cali, which is Sangio cab blends. We've got a Petite Sangio where we blended Petite Syrah and Sangio together. We've got the Malbec Et. We're just about to bottle our first Cab Et, which is, it's a really fun Central Coast Bordeaux blend where it's like Cab Franc and Malbec and Cab blended together. So it's our for fun label.
It's fun and so creative. I love the Malbec Et. And we've got one more wine
I think it's great
and
to
talk
leave yourself room to keep exploring, keep discovering, and keep making it fun for yourself, right? Not just do the same thing.
I'd be so bored. I'd be so bored if I made 3 wines and made like, a couple thousand cases of each wine. Like, from the story that you've just heard, I need to be busy and I need to be challenged on multiple levels to be fulfilled. If I made Pinot Chard Cab and 3,000 cases of each, that wouldn't be fun for me. And it's not fun for the tasting room.
Well,
people want new and different, and you always have a new different flight from us. And even if you come in and you're like, oh, I just did this last week, we can be like, oh, don't worry about it. We got these open. We'll just do a new flight for you.
Else, yeah. Well, that's really great. And I think it helps make wine so much less intimidating and that you can have fun with it. And, you aren't doing a formulaic product. You're not sticking to the classics. You are certainly respecting those, but then you're putting your own twist on it.
Winemaking's a philosophy, right? I'm really crafting this as the way that I talk about wine and winemaking and winemakers. We're all running on a philosophy and a belief system that resonates and we understand to work for us. And that's what makes winemakers different. It's those decisions and it's that philosophy of, I'm not going to put this wine through a must pump because I don't like the texture that it's making. So I'm making the decision that I don't need a must pump in my winery because that's not something I'm going to do. That's a choice, right? And so there's thousands of choices. And so I say the winemaker's philosophy is what you're tasting. And so like my philosophy is to be, not super intrusive on the wine. It's to be delicate. And then it's also to just have fun.
Yeah.
I explore wine. I'm a big wine geek. I taste wines from all over the world as much as I can get my palate on because I love wine. And so we get inspiration from our exploration.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
it's
so
great.
great.
And I love that notion of your own philosophy, your signature on what you're doing.
It's really like just over the last 2 years, that's the word that I use like all the time with people where it's like, this is my philosophy. It doesn't mean it's right.
Right. It's personal.
This is just like, I like to do this because it gives me the result that I'm looking for. And it's really starting to serve well.
That's great. So tell us about the Syrah that's in our glass.
So this Syrah got 4% Viognier from the estate vineyard. The vineyard is called, so we do 100% Viognier from this vineyard. It's called Chiara Vineyard, which is Italian for Claire, which is my wife's name.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So as I was like planting the grapes and like mucking around in the dirt, I was like, what am I going to call this vineyard? So this has Chiara Viognier in it, 4%, co-fermented. This is Escol Vineyard as well, because I kind of wanted to give a good nod to the Highlands. For Syrah, I make 5 different vineyard designate San Lucia Highlands Syrahs. I think Syrah is one of the most beautiful things in the San Lucia Highlands.
This is so lovely. It really is great. I think this is the first time I've had a Syrah off of Escol.
This is the first fruit off of Escol from, they grafted it. And this was in 19 was the very first fruit that was picked off of Escol.
Great.
So I was lucky enough to get a little bit of it, and I continue to. It's Alban clones. It's just this meaty, gamey, coffee, toffee, just black pepper spice.
Exactly.
Just really where I want to be in Syrah land.
And yet also it's got a soft texture to it. It doesn't, it's not making your mouth angry. It's
Tannin management's a big deal in Syrah. When you're making the wine, giving it oxygen. This is all back to the philosophy thing. Giving it oxygen when you think it needs it, and all those things impact the texture and the flavors.
So cool.
Wonderful.
So you have 2 boys.
I have a 10 and a 9-year-old.
Do they work in the vineyards? Are you thinking that are they showing any interest in carrying this on down the road?
I am super hopeful.
Yeah.
I love legacy. The thing that I love about this valley is some of my friends are 5th generation cattle ranchers or, row crop farmers. 5th generation, like think about that. That is a lot of time and a lot of history. And that just gives me the shivers. Like I love that.
It's wonderful, yeah.
And you go to France and you see 5th generation winemaker and you're like, oh my God, that's so cool. So I hope that they get the same shivers. I hope that I can inspire them. I tell Junior and Chad all the time that they're my test babies for what to do and what not to do. For my children.
Well, it's true because the oldest kid always gets the worst parenting because parents are too nervous or trying too hard or whatever. And so you need a couple of testers. I have 4 kids, so I know.
I am truly hopeful that they'll see that it's such a beautiful lifestyle, and I'm hopeful that it'll always, winemaking and running a winery is always going to be tough, but I hope that we're through the real pigeonhole of it started with nothing and building into something, and now we have something, and now it's their job to continue to build that. This year is the first year that they said yes to. I'm going to give them each a half a ton, and I'm not giving it to them actually. They're going to learn how to make wine with that half a ton. They're going to get to make the decisions. I'll give them the options of what they can do, and they're going to put their toe in the water and make their first wine this year. And it's going to be like an FFA project where the cost of the fruit, cost of the glass, cost of the corks, and all that stuff, designing their own label, and they're going to go through the whole process of that wine, and then we'll sell it in the tasting room.
Wow.
And whatever money they make from it will go into their college fund.
How fun. That's so cool.
Dennis, that's a great idea.
And I'm hopeful that it's going to generate an interest and an intrigue. They always come down and around this time they're just like, Dad, when are we going to go check the grapes? When are we going to go taste grapes? Because we have little grape wars in the vineyards and, when I'm sampling vineyards and they love the juice when we have the tanks full, when it's just juice before it's starting to ferment. It's all sugary and sweet and yummy. So they come down and they taste it and they're like, I like that one. I don't like that one. So there's a lot of conversation happening, but I'm hopeful I don't mess it up. Let's put it that way.
I can't imagine
Well,
how you
so far you haven't, and we can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy, busy, busy life to chat with us and share your story, share your beautiful wines. And I just want to say, I think we both agree, both Marys would thank you for everything you're doing for the community, for inspiring other winemakers. And we hope to see the 2nd generation here at Odonata one day.
Yeah, and
I hope so.
And hats off to you for putting in the work and believing in yourself and believing in your ability to make your dream come true. I'm so glad you have. And thanks again for being here today. Sip, sip, hooray, Dennis.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Well, that's going to do it for our show today. We're so glad you found Sip Sip Hooray podcast. We thank you for listening, and we really encourage you to share our podcast with your friends.
So Go to whatever podcast platform you listen to our pod on and be sure to rate us or review us. It helps other people find our podcast too. And be sure to subscribe to the pod so you don't miss another episode. But there's plenty of episodes we've got on our website from past interviews that you won't want to miss. So visit sipsiphoorayypodcast.com.
And we're also, of course, on social media. You can find us at Sip Sip Hooray Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. We'd love to hear from you. If you have ideas for future podcasts or great finds you want to share with us, just DM us and we'll get back to you.
Thank you for listening. I'm Mary Babbitt. Cheers and sip, sip, hooray.
Cheers to you, Mary Orland. Sip, sip, hooray.